So good morning. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you to the first session on the third day of the annual faculty development program titled Post-COVID-19 Media, Entertainment and Digital Consumption, organized by VIMC's External Research Committee. I'm Saloni Bhardwaj, and on behalf of the External Research Committee, I welcome all the participants and our special guest for the first session, Mr. Saahil Murli Menghani. I also welcome our chairperson, Professor Siddharth Mishra, and our dean, Professor Dr. Charulata Singh. I request all the participants to please keep their mics on mute. The theme on which Mr. Saahil Menghani is going to be speaking today is rather interesting because this is a turning point in the newsrooms, and because of the fact that we cannot think about print media or social media or radio or television without touching digital media. So digital media is changing, and digital media is changing because of data and artificial intelligence. And this is what we are going to be speaking about today. The reason that Mr. Saahil has joined us is because he is well known for anchoring and reporting. But before I ask my guest to join us, I'm going to first ask Professor Dr. Charulata Singh to come for the welcome address. Professor Singh is a renowned media researcher and academician who has a number of books and research publications of national and international repute to her credit. She has been guiding our journalism department for 16 years. Ma'am, kindly come and do your welcome address, please.
Thank you, Saloni. As we enter into the third day of this FDP, week-long FDP, which we have organized, and I welcome all the participants of this FDP once again for today's sessions. As we know, we are discussing about the post-COVID-19 media, entertainment and digital consumption scenario as the broader theme, and insights into that. The today's sessions are specifically to newsrooms and changing trends in the television reporting and presentations. And we, on behalf of Vivekananda Institute of Professional Studies and Media School and our chairperson and all the faculty members, I welcome Mr. Saahil Murli Menghani for this session on changing trends in television reporting and presentation. I believe that there has been a lot of change over the years in the television reporting and presentation. The presenters today, I believe, or the anchors today are not only the presenters, they are the multitaskers. So how it has changed and what is changed, and how what all goes behind when the anchor is presenting. Probably we are going to have insight on that, and we welcome you, Mr. Saahil, for this session. And over to Saloni, please.
Mr. Saahil Murli Menghani is a news reporter and anchor with 11 years of experience in TV journalism. He is a contributor for 2 international TV channels, UK's Channel 4 News and Norway's NRK. He was awarded Best Young TV Journalist by NTA and Changemaker of the Year by Save the Children for his investigations and features in India. He has been associated with various organizations, including CNN News 18, Times of India, and Youth Ki Awaaz. He has done investigation for The Wire. He is known for his verified series of stories on various digital platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Some of his recent works include Delhi riots coverage, migrant workers crisis, COVID second wave crisis, Operation Hashtag, Operation Shramik Trains, and farmer protest ground reportage. Saahil, I welcome you once again, and I request you to please begin your session.
Thank you so much, Saloni. Thank you so much, everyone at VIPS, for having me here, and all those who are attending So without wasting much time, let me straight away get to the point. We are discussing, of course, the changes in the patterns of television reporting and presentation. But before I actually get to the core of the issue, let me just brief you what is going to be the flow of this conversation. First, I'm going to briefly talk about data journalism. Saloni did tell me that everyone at VIPS is very keen about data journalism, and I think you'll be having a detailed session next. But what I'll give you is how, as a reporter who is actually the person who gets data into the system so that artificial intelligence and the softwares and systems can then chip in to produce great output, how, as a reporter, I'm seeing changes in that data being accessible. So that is going to be a very brief that is one topic that I'm going to touch very briefly for about 5 minutes, and then I'll get to the core of this discussion, which is how reporting has changed, at least on the ground, in my perspective, in my personal experience, particularly over the last 2 years, and more specifically post COVID-19 hit all of us. And finally, once we have discussed all of that, I'm going to throw some light on what I think are possibly some of the factors that are going to determine how reporting progresses over the next 5 years. What is going to be the future of ground reportage, and maybe how is that going to impact the newsrooms? How is that going to impact individual journalists? And which is something of very, very consequence to all the professors who are attending this, because that is what they are going to pass on to the students who would then become our freshest journalists, if we can call them, over the next 4 years. So let's begin. The first topic, of course, is data journalism. As far as data journalism, and I think Atulji is here, and he has a link of my report that I've done just done for NRK. It's a report that I also did for UK's Channel 4. It is about how data can then be used to produce an investigation. The point that I want to talk about data journalism is just this much, because theoretical knowledge and more detailed examples would be shared in the next session by the speaker who's going to be speaking on data journalism and artificial intelligence. But as a reporter, this is what I feel, that COVID-19 has impacted everything, and data journalism has not remained unaffected. Governments all across the world, but particularly in third world countries, particularly in developing nations like India, like Argentina, like Brazil, Mexico, and even Indonesia, uh, governments have used COVID-19 as an opportunity to further tighten their grip around data. Uh, Earlier, if it was not so easy to get data into the system, now it has become next to impossible. And that is what I wanted to talk about. COVID-19, at least in India, gave opportunities to governments. Earlier, we used to criticize the central government that they were not very forthcoming with the information ever since they came into power once again in 2019. But post COVID-19, this is what I feel, and I've been covering Delhi government for years now. The Delhi government, Haryana government, and even UP government, Rajasthan government, these are the four governments that I used to cover by the virtue of being in their official mailing list, by being in touch with the ministers. They just used this opportunity to cut us off from the government machinery. So even something as basic as number of deaths in COVID, how are those deaths happening, what was the hospital occupancy in real time. Of course, we used to get those figures in 2 or 3 days and at a delay of at times even a week, and now as we are seeing even three to 4 months, now we are getting the actual data. But to get something as basic as that, we were just cut off. The ministers and their PRs had stopped responding to us. The chief ministers have now started doing monologues, which they now pass off as press conferences. Even the ministers have now started doing press conferences. They call them press conferences from the comfort of their bedrooms, from the comfort of their conference rooms, in their own reference, and they just don't take questions. And thereby, I think this has marked a very, very big change in the way we gather data. Look, if there is no data, you can have very sophisticated mechanisms, you can have very fancy softwares, You can have very experienced graphics teams. But if you're not going to get good data, you clearly cannot have a good product at the end of the day. And that is why I think now the big challenge for those who are coming in now, for the students, and I think you should pass on this knowledge to students, that now if it was tough for us to the previous generation to get data, quality data, then it has become next to impossible for those who will be coming, because the government's things would improve. Maybe we would reach at a stage when COVID would be left behind us, but the chinks in the system that have been created by it, I don't think so any government is going to let go of it. Even look at the RTI that was conceptualized in the early 2000s, compare it to the RTI that actually came in, that was passed by the parliament, then came into the amendments that were made in the year 2010, 2011. And now look at the roadblocks that the governments are creating in even getting something as basic as some very basic information. It clearly points towards the fact that if all these signals are to go by, then data journalism is going to become very, very difficult. But with every difficulty comes an opportunity. And that is why Atulji now can play my report before I go ahead. This is a report that I had filed for NRK. It's a channel in Norway. And I've done this investigation also for UK's Channel 4. Why we are calling it an investigation is because this was something very basic that should have been made available to us by the government. But because the government was hiding these figures, even getting access to this data is now investigation. So that is a change. And I think students must know about this, that the opportunity in India right now is that even if you get access to some very basic data, that itself is an achievement. So while, let's listen in.
I think he can narrate his part of the story.
We are turning to Saahil Menghani, freelance journalist in New Delhi, who has been documenting unofficial figures for us. And what have you found?
First of all, counting in a country which is as large as ours, a country with a population of over 1 billion people, is a mind-boggling task. So here's what I've been doing persistently, and that is focusing on just one aspect, that is a mismatch between government's figures and the figures that I then gather from different crematorium and burial grounds. Now, there are 29 crematorium and burial grounds in the national capital. I've spent the last few days surveying them all, and this is what my investigation now reveals.
मैं देखती हूँ उसमें एक तो डेट डालो और जो भी आप degree you have taken the degree.
As far as government's figures are concerned, if you go by their official data, then 5,006 people died of COVID in the national capital. But my survey of 29 crematoria and burial ground reveals that they cremated a staggering 8,558 people just from COVID dedicated centers and hospitals in the same period of 15 days. That's 3,552 more deaths than the government's figures.
And what does that tell us about the national situation?
So when you see that this is the situation in a city which I must say is relatively more transparent, you can then imagine what must be happening in other states all across India, particularly India's villages. Now, there are states which clearly have been underreporting. It has been acting against journalists, which are trying to find figures like I have for the national capital. So their figures are even more, because as I was saying, even these figures that I've been able to find does not include suspected COVID deaths, does not include people who die outside hospitals. You can then imagine what must be happening in other states all across India, particularly India's villages. Now, there are states which clearly have been underreporting. It has been acting against journalists, which are trying to find... We can now
stop playing the report. So thank you so much, Atul. The essence of that report is that Delhi government, I had asked this to several officers of the Delhi government and the health department, that please that I had a query to them about some data that I needed. I'd been visiting different graveyards, different burial grounds during the second wave. And at just one burial ground in Northeast Delhi is Seelampuri. I found that in just my 5 hours of stay there were 70 to 80 mortal remains that had been brought in. And the death tally of that day given by the Delhi government to us was just 120, 130. And that's why it struck me that that was just not possible. How is it that I was at a burial ground just for 5 hours and 70 to 80 people were being brought in? And the overall figure of Delhi government was just 130. So I then went to the records and I found out that there are 29 burial grounds and graveyards. So I sent this query to Delhi government. Is there a mismatch? Please, can you provide me the latest data, or can you direct me to someone who can give me this data? There was no response. I waited for a couple of days. There was no response. So this is what I did. And that is why I want you to pass on this message to students, that governments have made it very difficult to access quality data, but then you have to devise your own tricks. And the fundamentals of news gathering remains exactly the same. And what are those fundamentals? One, as we call it in India, jugaad. They will have to become even more jugadu with data. That is the term. You will not find it in textbooks, but this is what the reality is. Now you have to ensure that you are uh, even more smart with just to look for basic chinks in their system, in the government's defense. So that's one. You have to become more street smart. You have to become you need to have more presence of mind. This is what I think you should be teaching, you should be telling students. And three, most importantly, students will now have to become RTI experts. Till 2019, also journalists had been using RTI, but till 2019, the feeling was that this is something that should be left best to RTI activists. But now I feel that it has become very, very crucial for journalists to make it a daily habit to file RTIs. For me personally, it was a very cumbersome process filing my first RTI. I got over the hesitation, the mental block to file it.
Saahil, I need to intervene. You please stick to the topic of the day. The session, people are here to attend the session for a particular topic. So please stick to that.
Okay.
Yeah, please stick to that. Let's not deviate the topic. It's a faculty development program, a very serious business. The professors and lecturers are here to talk about experiences of you as a TV journalist. Right?
Okay. So data. Okay, so data, I'll rest my case with data journalism. The trick is these three things. Now let's move to the core of this conversation, which is what are the patterns? The first change that I've seen happening over the past few years is that a reporter is now not just a reporter, but also a video editor, also a sub-editor, and also a social media wizard. For instance, in my Delhi riots coverage, it's an example which I would like to quote. Because we were told that the coverage of Delhi riots is a very, very sensitive topic. We were told to be very responsible with what we are even sending to the office and what we are putting on social media. So this is what I had done. And I think this is also what is going to be a requirement for the students as well. That is to now know basic tools of all of this, to blur, to edit out basic content, and to also put basic text on what you're doing. And it is important to become a social media wizard as well, because right now the maximum impressions one get on reports is on social media. So that is one change that has happened. The second change which has happened is, as I said, a reporter is now all of this, but COVID-19 has added another layer. Apart from a reporter being all of this, a reporter has also become a teacher. And I'll explain to you how in just a while. And I would just like to cue Mr. Atul that in a couple of minutes, he can play the second report while I talk about what I'm going to say. COVID-19 has ensured that people have become hesitant to meet us in physical. As a storyteller, earlier what we used to do is break the ice by meeting people in person, but now that has become very difficult, at least what I've seen as a reporter on ground. We are not able to get in touch with those whom we want to interview, and that is why we are now also becoming teachers of citizen journalism. That is, now people are more than comfortable in recording their own videos, but they do not know the basics of journalism, what they should be saying, how they should be recording, the format of the camera, how they should be keeping the microphone, and how short they should be keeping it, and what are the things that they should be focusing on. So as a communicator, as a journalist, we of course in the business know it, but common citizens do not. And that's why I think COVID-19 has also made a reporter into a teacher. For instance, I managed to get onto one of the Shramik trains. Remember, Shramik trains were started by the government of India during lockdown #1, when migrants were being transported from one state to another. And I managed to get onto one Shramik train. And once I was with those migrant workers, they told me that their friends were coming from different parts of the country. People were traveling from Mumbai to Bihar, Bangalore to Bihar, Delhi to UP, all across. So, and I had put out one report for which the government had said that this was just an exception. Ministry of Railways had responded to that report by saying that this is just an exception, otherwise everything is fine. But I was hearing stories in that train in real time that it was happening all across. What was happening? Trains were taking 96 to 100 hours for a journey that was just 24 hours. People were not being given food, water for 96 to 100 hours. People were falling ill in those trains. They had no food, no water, not even electricity in the scorching heat of 40 to 42 degrees. So this is what I did. I asked those migrant workers to get me in touch with other migrant workers who were in other trains, some in Bangalore, some in Tamil Nadu, some in Mumbai. And then I taught them how to hold their mobile phones and how to take reactions. And this was the result. And this is, I think, what now reporters are also going to be doing for the next few years, because people are now going to be very, very hesitant in actually meeting reporters, which is very critical for storytelling. Let's look at this report. You'll understand what I'm trying to say. Let's see how migrant workers themselves became reporters.
There's some problem with the audio.
भाई हमारी जो है वो 23 को आनंद विहार से पुणे के लिए चली थी। अभी 49 आवर्स और जगह जगह पे रुक रही है, आधे घंटे के लिए, 2 घंटे के लिए, 3 घंटे के लिए, मतलब 5 मिनट चल रही है फिर ट्रेन रुक रही है बार बार। और उस दिन से हम लोगों ने कुछ भी नहीं खाया है, और यहाँ तक कि टॉयलेट में पानी भी नहीं है, मतलब वहाँ धोने के लिए या फिर बाथरूम जाने के लिए बिल्कुल पूरी तरह से, मतलब हम यहाँ पे जनता जो है सब फंसे हैं, पूरे सारे पैसेंजर फंसे हुए हैं। और ये लोग को ध्यान भी नहीं दे रहे। हम लोग गार्ड के पास भी गए थे, ड्राइवर के पास भी गए थे, जो लोको पायलट है वो कह रहे हैं कि हम क्या करें, हमें जो ऊपर से आदेश मिल रहा है हम वो कर रहे हैं, हमें सिग्नल नहीं मिल रहा है, तो हम कैसे आगे बढ़ाएंगे गाड़ी को। तो अब बताइए इस सिचुएशन में क्या किया जाए। हमारे साथ और भी लोग हैं जो कि बताएंगे, ये हमारे साथ ये भाई भी मौजूद हैं, ये बताएंगे आपको क्या मतलब कुछ मिला है खाना पीना ट्रेन में अब तक, कैसा मतलब कितने घंटा हो गया है? 50 घंटे तो हो चुके हैं अब तक ट्रेन में, बताइए 4 दिन हो गए हैं, कैसा लग रहा है, मतलब आपको क्या लग रहा है कि पहुंच पाएंगे हम लोग? बताइए, ये लोग कह रहे हैं कि हम कल पहुंच पाएंगे, मतलब लोग जो है उम्मीद खो बैठे हैं कि
So we can pause this report now. Okay, so there are other reports as well, but I think due to paucity of time, let's not play all of them. We can skip report number 3 and report number 4. That's a cue for Atulji. There were similar reports that I got from migrant workers from various trains. This was, I think, a train that was going from Delhi to Bihar. I was in a train which was going from Delhi to Mathura. Delhi to Gomti. And there was another train in which I got similar reports. What I did was I stayed up whole night and briefed all of these people, migrant workers, who were savvy with their mobile phones, to record on their own. Initially, they were sending me videos which were recorded with mobiles kept like this, which is not good for video playing. So I briefed them something very basic, that to turn their mobile like this. Similarly, I told them how to keep them earphones, etc., etc. I put these texts, whatever I knew at that point of time. This improved over a period of time. And we were putting real-time reports out on Twitter. And by the next day, when this wasn't present in any national media, this wasn't there on anyone's perspective, the ministers were doing press conferences saying that all was fine. This was, in a way, exposing the reality in real time. That is why it's very important. So this was the beginning of the pandemic. And now then that became the practice. teaching non-journalists, guiding them to record like a pro, like a professional. And I think this is going to be the rule for the next 5 years as well, because people still are very hesitant in meeting people, and there are travel restrictions and various other restrictions. And also it is more cost effective. So citizen journalism has returned in a new avatar where journalists are now going to be teachers as well. So skipping third and fourth report, let's get to the point number 3, which I think is the current pattern and is going to change. We were constantly being told ever since I joined this profession, at least in the year 2010, that that digital is going to replace television, or at least it's going to present a big challenge to television. We were constantly being told to invest in our digital properties. We were being told that digital is going to arrive. In 2015, we were told this, 2016, we were told this, 2017. But what COVID-19 has done is that it has ensured the arrival of digital journalism. Digital journalism has now become the predominant means of, be it quality news gathering, or even in terms of its reach. And I'll tell you how in just a bit. In just 30-40 seconds, Atulji, you can play this report before as I brief you about this.
I'll be playing it. I'll be playing it. Is this the correct video?
Yeah, it's the correct video. Just give me 50 seconds to just briefly tell you about what I'm going to be discussing about. So digital journalism, digital media has now really taken over. And in digital media, there is an important term called collaboration, where individuals collaborate with other individuals to produce content. It's a very common phenomenon on Instagram, on YouTube. And this is what at least I have been practicing over the last few years. And you'll be able to connect the dots where I'm proceeding to when I come to the last topic, that is what is the future. In that perspective, please keep this in mind, because you will then be able to decode by the end of it where I'm trying to take this conversation to. The third chain that has happened, and the third pattern which is currently dominating ground reportage, is collaboration. Collaboration not between organizations, but between individuals. For instance, I was covering farmers' protests on my own. This was shortly after Jan 26 incident, when allegations were made against farmers about Tirange ka apman, that they had insulted the national flag on Jan 26. So a group of 100 young farmers had decided to run a relay from different villages of Haryana and Uttar Pradesh right towards still Ghazipur border at Delhi UP's Ghazipur border, a journey of 80 kilometers carrying close to, I think it's written in the tweet how many flags they were carrying. Saloni, if you can just scroll up. Yes, 2,000 flags. This was their response. So I decided to cover it. But the problem was there was no internet connectivity. The government had banned the internet. So I covered 40 kilometers on my own. And then I collaborated with the journalist Gulia of Haryana Ki Awaaz. It's a hyper-local Facebook news channel, which is run by journalist Gulia. So he covered 40 kilometers of it, and I covered the first 40 kilometers of it. I gave my footage to him. He gave my footage to his footage to me. I was able, and I withdrew from this race after 40 kilometers, and I went to the editing room. My editing room was, of course, a neem ka ped in one of the villages in Haryana. That's where I edited. And by the time he completed his journey, I had already put this report out, and this garnered close to 2 lakh views. And the impressions it got was 3 crore impressions in just 7 hours of playing this report. Let's just play a bit of this report that I recorded, edited, put the text on before even completion of all of this, courtesy a collaboration with a local journalist.
ये भाई कितनी पलाटा है रे, क्यों है जोश, किसान पुत्र का जोश है, देख लो भाई। साहब मैं बॉर्डर पर का फौजी बोलूं तो फौज में भर्ती होते ही सरहद पे जा गए।
This was audible.
Okay, yeah, it was audible. So if you look at that report, the text, the editing, all of it was done while on the move. There was no internet, so then I of course reached out to locals to give me Wi-Fi, but that is not the problem that people are usually going to face, so I'm not going to talk about that. I put in the text, everything. This was made possible because we had a collaboration. Collaboration, again, not between one network and the other, but between one journalist and the other, where I gave courtesy to him, he gave courtesy to me, and we were able to achieve this product without having sophisticated means, just through the sheer power of collaboration. And this is the current trend. I'll request Saloni to play report number 6 and 7 and 8 in just 50 seconds. Similarly, on Jan 26th evening, I'm not sure if you can recall, but this is what had happened on Jan 26th evening during farmers' protest. All news channels, name any news channel, they were flashing on their screens with their primetime anchors on the field, saying that farmers' protest is about to get over, that farmers' protest is about to end, that Rakesh Tikait is going to be arrested, and the farmers' protest is going to end. This was flashed on all channels. Primetime anchors were on the ground announcing it. Very same time, I was breaking this story on my social media platforms that the tables had turned, that there was a mass movement which was happening from India's villages, from Haryana, from Uttar Pradesh, and even as far as from Chandigarh and Punjab, overnight, of farmers coming all the way from these villages to Ghazipur at that very moment, and that the tables had turned and farmers' protest is here and it's going to even intensify more. I was putting out from 8 p.m. and then I started putting out these reports. I was reporting from Ghazipur first, then I moved to nearby villages of that region, but I wasn't in Haryana, I wasn't in Punjab, Chandigarh. So then I reached out to farmers. I reached out to local farmers and I told them what was really happening. They said that the video of Rakesh Tikait breaking down, crying helplessly, had really agitated and it had gone viral. It was shared on local Facebook, WhatsApp groups, and it had really gone viral. And people were really agitated, and farmers were marching down overnight to Ghazipur. And so then I told them, send me the videos, because people were not believing what I was putting out. And this is what they did. They were guided by me. And this is what I'm talking about, the collaboration between a journalist and people, a journalist and local reporters. And this is the new strength. Let's take one of the reports, what farmers sent me. Try playing the report in which the man, yeah.
कदे उनका खेत मार के देखा था मैंने पूछा है, अबे कुकर तुम अपनी खेती चला रहे हो, कुकर अपने घर का खर्च चला रहे हो, ये निकल लिया भाई, ये देख लो, ये देख लो भाई अपने बच्चा सहित। हाँ बेटा इधर आओ आगे, इधर आओ आगे। किसान एकता, किसान एकता, ये देखो भाई छोटे छोटे बच्चे के लिकड़ लिए भाई अपना, सब ने अपने बालक पैरे लग गए हैं, लेकिन भाई मैं भी अपने बालक ने लेकर लिकड़ लिया हूँ। लेकिन एक बात बता दे, हम तो अपनी करके खा लेंगे, अपने हिसाब के बोलेंगे, पेट पाल लेंगे।
Thank you so much, Saroni, for that. So this was one of the many reports that I put out from Haryana, from Chandigarh, from Punjab, from Rajasthan, of an overnight movement of farmers that was happening, mobilization that was happening towards Delhi UP's Ghazipur border. And I was breaking story after story saying that there is no way farmers' protest is ending. If anything, it was getting more intensified. Tractors after tractors, hundreds of tractors from every district was leaving towards Ghazipur. And my story was that farmers' protest was intensifying. On the other hand, we had mainstream national media with all its money, power, etc., but totally clueless about what was happening on the ground. They were far off from the reality. They were living in their own vision and reporting an absolutely incorrect news just on the basis of government sources, because UP police had deployed a lot of police at Ghazipur border. But then over the next 7 hours, I had put out some 7 to 8 reports, and the impressions on these reports just on Twitter, I'm not even including YouTube and other platforms and Instagram, just on Twitter in 7 hours, these 7 reports garnered an impression of 10 crore viewers. 10 crore views, 10 crore impressions were registered on these 7 to 8 reports. I think this one was viewed the most but this was, I think, viewed the least, 1,70,000 views currently. That is what I'm talking about. This is the trend. People are now, even the consumers are now trusting individuals more than the organizations, because they know that independent reporters have the ears on the ground. And independent reporters are now, because they don't have resources to just travel to have teams and people everywhere, they are now collaborating. This is a very cost-effective way, and this helps us remain in touch with the ground reality. But earlier, the problem used to be of the video quality. But now mobile phones have become sophisticated. And also that's why I think a journalist remains relevant, because we know the tricks of communication. We know the way to shoot it. We just need to simplify them and pass them on to these farmers, people on the ground, who can then just get some basic things correct, like holding their mobile phones like this, holding the mic of the earphones close, and just keeping it precise and crisp, not sending 20 minutes of footage, but just 2 minutes of footage, because that's all that we can use, and that's all what the viewers are going to watch. And this report turned out to be true. By morning, or this report, I think these reports started playing out by 8, 9. Before news channels closed at 11 p.m., they had declared that that was the last night of farmers' protest. The morning, of course, the tables, as we broke the news at 8 p.m., had turned, and farmers' protest is still on. So that was what I wanted to talk about, the current patterns. Let me also very quickly touch upon other factors before I move on to the last part, and then we can open it up for questions as well. Fourth pattern, as I briefly mentioned earlier, that we were being told that digital was arriving, but COVID-19 has ensured that digital has arrived, and there is a reason. If you go by all the surveys that have come in by McKinsey and by other global organizations, and also if you just open your eyes and see all around, more people have become addicted to their screens, to their mobile phones in this pandemic than ever before. And once you're on your mobile phones, once you're addicted to your mobile phones and you're spending a lot of time looking at the screen, news consumption cannot remain far away. And news consumption on these mobile sets are not coming from your conventional media centers, but it's coming to Facebook, through Instagram, through Twitter, and through YouTube. And now these are the 4 platforms that people are generally aware of, but then there are scores of other platforms. For instance, there is Substack, there is Discuss, there is now Twitter paid subscription, which has been launched in US and is going to be launched in India in the next 1 month, where Twitter users also can put a badge on their profile separately for paid subscriber, and that content will just be available to those who will be paying. And talking about paid subscription, this is the 5th pattern which I am right now witnessing as a reporter, as an independent reporter at least. And that 5th phenomenon is what I like to call, as I was also discussing with the students of ACJ and Madhya Pradesh Maharishi Institute of Journalism, and also with OP Jindal University, where I've been talking to them about this particular module, that this phenomenon is the Netflix phenomenon. Because people have now got used to subscribing to Netflix, to Amazon, to various other platforms, they've also opened up to the idea of subscribing for news. And the figures will tell you that. Look at the Caravan, look at the Wire, look at even the paid subscription services of various mainstream organizations all have witnessed a surge. We are talking about economic slowdown. Of course, there is. But as far as media is concerned, people are now subscribing. They are moving. They are realizing that if you want quality content, then you got to subscribe. They've opened up to the idea of subscription thanks to this wave of subscriptions that we have seen people taking up for various entertainment platforms like Netflix, like Amazon, but they're also opening up to subscriptions. And I think this is really great for the news media, and this is what is happening. And these are the dots you will be able to connect when I really talk about the future of journalism in just a bit. So keep this in mind when I say the Netflix phenomenon. Even YouTube and Twitter, last point of what I'm seeing as a reporter on ground. And why I wanted to talk about these new points is because I don't think so these are in the textbooks currently. This is what is happening right now in real time. And that's why I wanted to give you a sneak peek into what is really happening. And the last point is that even Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, etc., they are now on TV. How? Smart TVs have ensured that all of these apps, particularly YouTube and other video surfing platforms, they can now be played on your TV. So there are individuals who are entirely right now on YouTube, but they are viewed on their smart TVs. For instance, I was at the residence during this is farmers' protests, again related to farmers' protest coverage. I was at the residence of a young party chief in Aligarh.
I would like to just intervene in the middle. There are a lot of questions coming in, and we're going to be opening it for the question answer session now. Mona ma'am, over to you for Q&A.
Thank you so much, Saloni ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Saahil. It was quite an interesting session, honestly. We have got to know all about the collaborations and the tie-up. So we have a few questions coming in. I'll first talk about the question that have already been posted on the chat box, and then we would love to have an open house and people can unmute themselves and ask a question one by one. I request the participants to raise their hand so that we could go systematically in case if they want to ask a questions. So I'll first ask a question. Like many popular journalists have started their own YouTube channels, and after their fallout or disagreement with media houses, do you think they will sustain viewership? And what makes viewers watch such channels without any backing of a media organization?
I'm really glad that this question is asked because it actually covers the part that was remaining in the conversation, that is the future of journalism in India. And I think the future is independent organization, independence and individuals forming their own initiatives, because that is enjoying a great deal of credibility and views and revenue. All of three covered in this. People are now distrusting, and by people, I of course do not mean entire country. I think that is going to be a blanket statement, but there is a growing viewership and there is a growing belief that as far as news of your interest and your issues are concerned, then that will not be covered by the mainstream media. There's a growing belief that if there is, there has to be anyway a sort of an impact that has to be done in your life, then that can only be done by independence. And I'll give you an example. There are two YouTube journalists. And because of the sanctity of the oath of secrecy, I cannot share their names, but there are two YouTube journalists that are earning 4 lakh rupees per month. Earlier, they were earning close to 1 lakh in their organizations, 1 lakh rupee per month. Their salaries were 1 lakh rupee per month, a little over 1 lakh to be precise. But now they have joined YouTube with lakhs and lakhs of subscribers. One of them has 6 lakh subscribers, even as I speak. The other one has 16 lakh subscribers, and they are earning a minimum of 4 lakh rupees just from the advertising revenue that comes in from YouTube. Apart from that, there are paid subscriptions, which are seeing a rise. Apart from that, there are platforms like Substack, as I was saying. So the future of reporting, and that's why I would like to request even you to pass on this information to students, that the future is about branding. So the part about presentation, instead of presentation, the topic today is that what are the current patterns in television and in reporting and the presentation. So instead of presentation, I would like to say branding. Branding is now very important, and everyone, irrespective of whether you're working in the mainstream media, whether you're joining a new organization or you're starting something of your own, we should focus on branding a lot. Why should only the bad ones get good fame? Even the good ones should get fame. And the way to achieve it is branding. Again, due to paucity of time, I cannot explain how that branding should be done, but this is what I've been teaching the young ones.
Okay, coming back to the topic about changing trends in television, Mr. Hasif Fatima has a question that what are the specific changes brought about in TV news presentation after COVID-19 pandemic, as opposed to the general changes due to the rise of the digital?
Right. So first change, of course, is the use of technology. Post-COVID-19, even the newsroom started withdrawing from calling a lot of people to their newsrooms. So you would have seen anchors doing anchoring from their own places, which continues even now, because we'll continue to see waves going up and down. And channels, because they were seeing good quality products happening on digital medium, even the news channels have realized that as far as cost effectiveness of all of this is concerned, then it actually helps them to station a DSLR, a good quality DSLR, a circular light, which I'm currently not a fan of, but it really helps at the residence of their primetime anchor, and that primetime anchor then can go live at any point of time. So that has happened where this phenomenon, which was not earlier very common, of the portability of the usage of remote locations to anchor a news bulletin has happened in television. The other bit that has happened is that channels earlier also, they were focusing a lot on their digital properties. In fact, we were being told since 2016, since 2017 to write a lot of blogs for news18.com, which was CNN News 18's website. But now it has become absolutely essential. You just cannot go out without your presence on digital mediums. In fact, digital mediums are where even television reports are sold. If you have to make an impact, if you have to make a lot of noise about the kind of reportage that you do on television, the only place to achieve that is Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, particularly Twitter, where you need to ensure that the hashtag of your coverage, even if you're doing a big bang investigation, must trend on Twitter. For instance, there's a report that I did, Real Urta Punjab investigation. This was 2018, back in 2018. I had put it out on my Twitter feed, and that is where Sanjay Singh had picked it up, and he said, I'm going to raise it in the parliament. And that was a big impact. So this is what is happening. It's not that you can't achieve the same by going to those netas, but it's just that everyone wants to make noise on Twitter because that is where the visibility is. So that is what I think has changed.
And following with the same, the point that you've mentioned, Dr. Ahana Chopra has a similar question. She's also asking the role of social media, that how the social media has become a source of information for TV reporting, especially during Tokyo Olympics.
Absolutely. So I've been saying that social media is a major source of news gathering. Now you would say, what is the credibility of any bit which is there on social media? Or what is the credibility of even of citizen journalism? I did see one question on that as well. So that is where the role of a journalist comes in. We are that HEPA filter, so to say, which needs to really verify everything. By the advent of citizen journalism or by the advent of social media, it's not that journalist role will disappear. The fundamental, the old school reporting remains the same. To get the H's and W's right, to cross-verify everything, to act as a filter. Once you in your banner put that report out, it is your responsibility. And thereby the credibility comes from that. That you ensure that you check from the different quarters. The rules of reporting remain the same. It's just that the medium is now diversifying, and the rules of news presentation is changing, and the way we get access to news sources is changing. So, for example, and let me give an example to this effect. I was doing a campaign called Listen to Students, where I had got access to this tool or hint, a brief that was given to me that there was some scam happening in educational institutions. So I put it out on my Twitter profile that anyone who has any clue about it, please DM. And there were scores of students who DM'd me by saying that XYZ Institute was in a way putting pressure on them to maybe drop out or to convince everyone else to drop out so that they can get more admission. And we had put that out, I had put that story out on Twitter, which was then picked by NewsClick, which is a reliable website. And I then filed a byline for that news website. There's an investigation that I did, Operation Hashtag, where users on social media flagged me off about a very poisonous group of individuals which had formed a secret group on Telegram and Facebook to troll women journalists and to troll other independent women voices on Twitter and Facebook. So I managed to get an entry inside that poisonous group by pretending to be one of those. But a tip to me was given by someone on social media. So thereby, social media can become is a very important tool when it comes to even whistleblowing. Whistleblowers reaching out to you. Earlier, you had to, in a way, earlier there were no means for whistleblowers to reach you, but now there's Twitter profile where they just need to DM. But then your role as a journalist will then kick in. People can say that the top post in this country is corrupt. I have information, but then you need to verify. And that is why the role of journalists continues to be very important.
Okay, we have two questions and they both have somehow picked up two important factors. One question is by Dr. Baninder Rai, who says that television news is more of a noise than of a content. Okay, and at the same time, Ms. Bhumika Chandola has also been asking that with the element of theatrics in television, and again, the element of subscription with all the news platforms, don't you think that we are still been defeating the whole purpose of inclusivity of web? Because television has not been able to provide you quality content, and ultimately the marginalized people end up watching the same theatrics. So how come we are including them in the content consumption patterns?
That's a very, very good question. And I think sadly, there is no, that remains a problem. There is no solution to that. On one hand, you have free, cheap theatrics on television. And on the other hand, you're offering good quality product, which is not available for free. So people who still don't want to pay for news, who don't even want to pay ₹2 in their subscription channel for a channel which can give them quality news, will of course not pay ₹300 per annum for subscription. Currently, there is no solution to that. That also exists with even these entertainment streaming websites. There is MX Player, which is available for free, but then there is no quality content on that, but people watch them. And then there is Netflix, Amazon Prime, there is Discovery Plus, which is offering great quality product, and that requires money. And then people pay for that. So these are the two markets people will have to address to their market. The hope is that more people realize about the quality, the more they are going to get inclined towards paying up. And also the news TV model is not very sustainable. We are seeing the impact, be it in firings, be it news channels hiring cheap labor, where they are not looking at the quality of a person, but just the fact that he's available for 16,000 rupees a month or 17,000 rupees a month. They're not really testing the skills, not just of reporters, but even those who work in the newsroom, which is very important. So they are also compromising on the quality. Will they be able to sustain? Well, people have started realizing that this is not something good. There is, of course, an age group which wants to watch 9 p.m. news just as a way of venting their anger out. There are people also which still would say that news means say aaj tak. For them, this will remain. But then new models are coming up. And as a specific reply to that question, currently that is a very big problem for which there is no solution. The only thing that we can do is keep improving the quality and pushing people towards subscription. This is the best time. The time is right because people have got addicted to subscribing. People have moved from television to getting addicted to their mobile phones. And once they have their mobile in the hand, you need to just be great of great quality to push them towards you. But you cannot achieve, you cannot attract all. It is also not to say that people who do not have much money are not subscribing to good quality individual platforms. As I said, I collaborated with Haryana Ki Awaaz, with that local journalist in Haryana. His Facebook page, which opened post COVID-19, and there are hundreds of Facebook news channels which are doing hyper local news. They have subscriptions of 1 lakh, 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs, and some even are over 1 million. People are consuming their news from those platforms as well. So, and they are subscribing to those models. They want to know what is happening in my Karnal, what is happening in my Panipat, what is happening in my Moga, what is happening in my Sangrur, who's reporting about that. So there is market, and the market is expanding, and the market of, again, I would like to say, the credibility. People trust Haryana Ki Awaaz more than they would trust me, local people. And they clearly trust Haryana Ki Awaaz or other hyper local news networks more than they trust Aaj Tak. They say nahi, Aaj Tak nahi, ya ye channel nahi, ye bika hua hai, isko kharid liya gaya. Ye sacha banda hai, ye hamara banda hai. And there are Haryana reporters who now don a Haryana outfit like a pagadi, and they walk with their mics, which is like a long chhadi. So they are inculcating those elements. The scene is changing. Ground reporting and people's reliance on the credibility of these individuals is changing. This is what I'm witnessing on the ground. As I said, people are earning in lakhs per month, and it is sustainable because it's been happening over the last few years. It's been happening over the last 1.5 years at a time when we are saying that people don't have money in their pockets. Still, the subscriptions are going up. People want to donate. There are people who are really frustrated with the system and the status quo as it exists. They feel that if I contribute even 100 rupees to this person, it is going to bring a change. He's trying, she's trying, let us chip in. People are taking subscriptions. It's increasing, but yeah, it's a long way to go, but this is where the future is.
Okay, we do have 2 more questions, but I think more or less you've answered both the questions. One is about citizen journalism and another is about handling fake stories. And I think you very well answered about that. There are collaborations, there are tie-ups, and there is a credibility that over a period of time, we end up building it. So thank you so much. Thank you for a wonderful session. I think you've answered all our questions pretty well. Over to you, Saloni ma'am.
Thank you so much, Saahil. It was nice to know that, our television, and because we were thinking of you focusing on the television part of it more. The point is that television in itself, because we are well aware that, how digital is moving, and how that is becoming the future for it is, for all the mediums. Now, I would like to invite Professor Siddharth Mishra, who is a veteran journalist with an experience of more than 3 decades.
Right. We'll get going straight. Yeah, as Saloni put it, we were looking for a session on, how is the television newsroom working and how in these times when there is so many challenges. But very good exposition of your own efforts and journalistic initiatives and efforts and the impact which you have had over past so many years. We are here an assembly of teachers. A large number of them have come from industry. A large number of them who interact with industry. So basics are largely known to us. We largely look at the macro and the complex functions which are happening there. Like in 1990s, when the private television channels came in, everybody talked about newspapers going bunkers. That did not happen. Newspapers, found a way out. They used technology. And rather newspapers circulation, from a space of comfort, they came into a space of competition and they built the television hollow. And the newspaper subscription, like a paper like Dainik Jagran, which was a Kanpur paper, is today paper with 20 or 25 editions. Similarly, Amar Ujara, Agra paper, or Dainik Bhaskar, what you call a Jaipur or a Bhopal paper. So, the point is that a media which has been there, that media doesn't go away anyway. So the interest was rather in, when television, how is the television coping up with this onslaught with the pandemic, number one, in the pandemic-like situation, and how are they coping up with the, what you call, onslaught of the digital. Now, yesterday we had a very seasoned editor, a man who unraveled Panama Papers to us, Vivekananda, and he talked about how in the given situation, how even a paper like Indian Express, which does not really place to the gallery, how difficult it is for them, and we got quite an insight into functioning of the newspaper industry at this point of time and the challenges which have been faced. So we are going to have sessions on data journalism. We are going to have sessions on mobile journalism, and what you talk, there's all these gadgets and this camera sticks and those lights and all these things. Even before the pandemic happened, the Hindustan Times was handing it over to what you call their reporters, even their print reporters, a set of boxes, a set of box which had all these tools, so that if they went to, because they had started with a digital newsroom, so a print reporter was also expected to find a digital story. So these things have been there, but you see, television has not gone anywhere. Television is still there. And why is television sustaining itself? Whatever your threat, you see, we all in our own perception, we as journalists or media persons and students, we all might be very, very, what you call, must be seeing a story, a lot of story and this and that, and a lot of, getting very romantic about it. But the hard fact, the hard economy is that televisions are not going anywhere. They are stable, and they have managed to, and how are they coping with it? How are they doing it? Because you see, tomorrow when students pass out from, when I go back to my classroom, if a student comes to me and asks me, and I'm a teacher, I'm not an activist. If a student comes and asks me that is there that there are some openings in the television, should I take it or not take it? What do I tell him? I have to tell him that yes, there is an opening in the television, you please go and take it. So there we have television, I'm very sure, will reorient itself to meet the every organization. The print medium reoriented itself. It is further reorienting itself. The television medium would is started with further reorient itself. We talked about corruptions in television yesterday, the way they marketed themselves, the whole TRP scam and everything. We talked about it. Now we are done away with TRPs, and but you see, whenever, even when there was, Mahavishnu's of Mount Road and the big, the old lady of Boribandar, or for that matter, other newspaper, big media houses, there was also a space for small and medium newspapers, the local newspapers. So that trend in India has always been there. That, the big mass media houses and the small medium media houses. So and they have existed side by side, and they have existed side by side very successfully. Forget about, in fact, like if you thought Times of India was a big paper and Express was a small paper. No, smaller papers. Delhi ke Sholay, Chardi Kala, and all such kind of publications. They have all existed. Number one. Number two, you see, again, regional media is not something very new to this country. Jalandhar is in North India. Jalandhar is the biggest, much older and much bigger hub of media than Chandigarh. The Ajit group of publications and their television channels, the Naya Savera and all that. So we have had these traditions. The platforms are changing. The mediums are changing. You see, so I'm very sure television has its plans ready. And because this whole idea of digital being independent journalism and all, digital maybe investment aa jayega bade media houses. And it's already happening. We all are seeing it. And they will come up with their digital platform. So again, the big newspaper, the big media houses versus small media houses will continue. You will have your niche people to watch. You will have your people who would be subscribing to you, and people who would be watching you and following you. But yes, you have given us a lot of things to think about in Largely, if I was to sum up, if the whole discussion was on media house versus media person, yes, there would be media houses, there would be media persons, some media persons. Most of the time, media persons and media houses will work hand in hand. And in some cases, you will have a rebel, a baghi, who will be walking out and taking an independent stand. So, anyways, so I think, Saloni, I'm done. So maybe we could have had a better exposition of what television, how it has prepared itself for the situation.
I agree with you, and I agree with Saahil also, because I feel that the mediums are moving towards digital, and how they are, if digital is paying better, and if digital is paying more, and you're getting more followers, and you're able to do better stories. So that's why I think there are a lot of points.
But you see, this YouTuber who is earning 4 lakhs rupees per month, how many people is he hiring? And how many people is giving employment with a decent pay packet? You have to look at institutions where people will find employment.
Yes, and so they give you a lot of training also, because they become brands and then they go to YouTube.
Absolutely,
also.
absolutely. Yeah. So the role of media house cannot be ruled out.
Yeah, I agree. I think Saahil also agrees with that. Yes, this was a very good discussion. I feel that everybody was able to put their point across, and there were a lot of questions also. Thank you so much. Thank you all of you for joining.